Welcome back to Quarter Dollar, where we uncover the hidden treasures hiding in plain sight. Today, we're diving into something absolutely incredible. We're talking about Lincoln Wheat Pennies and coins that most people tossed into jars or spent without a second thought. But here's the shocking truth. Some of these pennies are worth more than a brand new car, more than a house, and in some cases, enough to change your life forever. We're counting down the top 5 Lincoln Wheat Pennies that are worth a small fortune, and trust me, the values we're about to reveal will leave you speechless. Before we get started, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because you don't want to miss a single coin we cover on this channel. All right, let's jump right in. First up, we have a penny that changed American coinage forever. This is the 1909 SVDB Lincoln Wheat Penny, and what you're looking at right now is a piece of history that sparked one of the biggest controversies in United States mint history. Now, before you think this is just another old penny, let me tell you something that will blow your mind. This single coin, even in the heavily worn condition you see here, can be worth anywhere from $15,000 all the way up to $450,000. Yes, you heard that right. A penny worth nearly $500,000. Let me explain why this coin is so incredibly valuable and why collectors are willing to pay a fortune to own one. Back in 1909, the United States Mint made a historic decision. They replaced the Indian head design that had been on pennies for 50 years with a brand new design featuring President Abraham Lincoln. This was the very first time a real person appeared on regular United States coinage, and it was a huge deal. The designer was a talented sculptor named Victor David Brenner, and he was so proud of his work that he placed his initials, VDB, on the reverse of the coin, right at the bottom between the two wheat stalks. And sounds innocent enough, right? Well, the public went absolutely crazy. People complained that the initials were too large, too prominent, and that Brenner was advertising himself on American money. The outcry was so intense that the mint pulled the design after producing only a limited number of coins, and they removed those initials and continued production without them. But here's where it gets interesting. The San Francisco Mint, marked with that tiny S mint mark, had already produced just 484,000 of these pennies with the VDB initials before the design was changed. Compare that to the Philadelphia Mint, which made over 27 million. That makes the 1909 SVDB one of the lowest mintage Lincoln cents ever produced, and that scarcity is exactly what drives the value through the roof. Now, let's talk about the coin you're seeing on your screen right now. This particular 1909 SVDB has been through a lot. You can see the heavy circulation wear across the entire surface. Lincoln's portrait shows significant flattening, especially on the high points of his cheek, jaw, and hair. The word Liberty is still visible but worn, and the date 1909 shows some weakness in the digits. The coin has developed a deep brown and orange patina with darker oxidation spots scattered across both sides, which tells us this penny has been exposed to moisture and environmental elements over its 116-year life. There's visible surface roughness and some corrosion, particularly around the rim and in the field areas. On the reverse, those famous VDB initials are still there, still visible between the wheat stalks, and that's the key. Even with all this wear, even with the environmental damage, even with the rough surfaces, this coin still holds tremendous value because of what it represents and how rare it is. So what's a coin like this actually worth? In this heavily circulated condition, what collectors call good to very good grade, you're looking at a value between $15,000 and $22,000. That's right, even beat up and worn down. This penny is worth more than a brand new car, but here's where things get really exciting. If you happen to find one of these in better condition, maybe one that was tucked away in a drawer or saved in an old collection, the value skyrockets. In fine condition where more details are visible, these coins sell for $35,000 to $50,000. In extremely fine condition where Lincoln's features are sharp and clear, you're talking about $75,000 to $120,000. And if you're lucky enough to own one in uncirculated condition, one that never saw the inside of someone's pocket, never got spent at the corner store, you're holding a coin worth $250,000 to $450,000. Some of the finest examples, graded Mint State 67 or higher by professional grading services, have sold at auction for over $600,000. Can you imagine a single penny bringing in more than $500,000 at auction? Here's what makes this coin so special beyond just the numbers. The 1909 SVDB represents a perfect storm of collectability. You've got the first year of issue for the Lincoln cent design. You've got the controversy and drama of the removed initials. You've got the San Francisco Mint mark, which always adds desirability. and you've got that incredibly low mintage of less than 500,000 coins. When you combine all those factors, you create one of the most sought-after coins in all of American numismatics. Every serious Lincoln cent collector needs this coin to complete their set, and that constant demand keeps prices climbing year after year. So how do you identify a real 1909 SVDB? First, look at the date. It should read 1909 clearly on the obverse. Second, check below the date for that small S mint mark, which indicates San Francisco. Third, and this is the most important part, flip the coin over and look at the bottom center of the reverse, right between the two wheat stalks. You should see the letters VDB in small but clear lettering. If all three of those elements are present, you've got yourself a genuine 1909 SVDB Lincoln Wheat Penny, and you need to get it authenticated and graded immediately. Even in poor condition, you're sitting on serious money. This is not a coin you want to clean, polish, or try to improve yourself. Any cleaning will destroy the value. Take it to a professional coin dealer or send it to a reputable grading service like PCGS or NGC. They'll authenticate it, grade it, and seal it in a protective holder that will preserve it and verify its authenticity for future buyers. The 1909 SVDB Lincoln Wheat Penny is more than just a coin. It's a piece of American history, a symbol of change, and a reminder that sometimes the smallest things can be worth the biggest fortunes. Even this worn example you're looking at represents life-changing money for whoever owns it. Moving on to our second treasure, and this one might surprise you because it looks like just an ordinary worn penny from the 1950s. But what you're looking at right now is a 1953 D Lincoln Wheat Penny, and depending on a few critical factors, this seemingly common coin could be worth anywhere from $3 to over $20,000. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can a regular 1953 D penny be worth that much? Well, let me tell you the fascinating story behind this coin and show you exactly what to look for that separates a common penny from a valuable treasure. The year 1953 was a pivotal time in American history. The Korean War armistice was signed, ending 3 years of conflict. Dwight Eisenhower had just been inaugurated as the 34th President of the United States, and the United States Mint was producing hundreds of millions of Lincoln Wheat Pennies across 3 different mint facilities. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 256 million pennies with no mint mark. The Denver Mint, which is what we're looking at here, produced a massive 700 million pennies marked with a D below the date. And the San Francisco Mint made over 181 million pennies marked with an S. Now, with those enormous production numbers, especially from Denver, you'd think these coins would be common and worthless, right? Well, here's where it gets interesting. While most 1953 D pennies are indeed common in circulated condition, there are specific varieties and conditions that make certain 1953 D pennies extremely valuable to collectors. Let's examine the specific coin you're seeing on your screen right now. This 1953 D Lincoln Wheat Penny shows significant circulation wear across both the obverse and reverse. The coin has developed a deep brown and reddish-brown patina with darker oxidation and environmental toning throughout. On the obverse, Lincoln's portrait displays moderate to heavy wear. His cheek, jaw, and hair details show flattening on the high points, which is typical for a coin that spent years in circulation. The date 1953 is clearly visible and legible, which is absolutely critical for identification. Now, here's the first thing you need to check. Look carefully below the date. On this particular example, you can see the D Mint mark, which means this penny was struck at the Denver Mint. The word Liberty on the left side shows wear but remains readable. In God We Trust appears above Lincoln's head with moderate wear to the letters. The fields display numerous contact marks, small scratches, and surface imperfections from decades of handling and circulation. On the reverse, you can see the iconic wheat stalks design that gives these pennies their nickname. The wheat ears on both sides show moderate to heavy wear, with many of the fine details worn smooth. The words, 1 cent, are bold and clear in the center, which is excellent. United States of America curves around the top of the coin, still legible despite the circulation wear. E pluribus unum appears between the wheat stalks at the top. The entire reverse has that same deep brown patina with areas of darker toning and some surface roughness from environmental exposure over the past 72 years. So what makes a 1953 D penny valuable? There are several critical factors. First, let's talk about the circulated examples like the one you're seeing here. In good to fine condition, a 1953 D penny is worth about 3 to 10 cents. In very fine condition, you're looking at 15 to 25 cents. In extremely fine condition, where more of Lincoln's details remain sharp, the value jumps to 35 to 75 cents. Not bad, but nothing life-changing. But here's where it gets exciting. Condition is absolutely everything. With these coins, if you find a 1953 D penny in uncirculated condition, one that never entered circulation, never got spent, never developed wear on Lincoln's cheek or the wheat stalks, the value skyrockets dramatically. A 1953 D penny in mint state 63 red-brown condition, where it shows some original red luster mixed with brown toning, can be worth $8 to $20. In mint state 64 red, where it retains most of its original bright red copper luster, you're looking at $25 to $60. In MS65 red condition, the value jumps to $80 to $200. In MS66 red, you're talking about $300 to $800. And here's where it gets absolutely insane. In MS67 red or higher, where the coin is virtually perfect with blazing red luster and no spots or imperfections, 1953 D pennies have sold for $2,500 to $8,000 at auction. But wait, there's more. The very finest examples, graded MS68 red by PCGS or NGC, are extremely rare and have sold for $15,000 to $22,000. Yes, over $20,000 for a 1953 D penny in perfect condition. What makes high-grade 1953 D pennies so valuable isn't just the condition, it's the perfect storm of factors. First, while 700 million were minted, the vast majority entered circulation and developed wear. Second, copper is a reactive metal that tones and spots easily, so finding examples with perfect red surfaces and no carbon spots is incredibly difficult. Third, these coins were struck during a time when nobody was saving pennies for their condition. People spent them without a second thought. Fourth, there's strong collector demand. Every Lincoln cent collector needs a 1953 D for their date and mint mark set, and serious collectors want the finest examples available. That constant demand keeps pushing prices higher for top-quality specimens. Now, here's something really exciting. There's also a rare variety of the 1953 D penny that collectors search for. It's called the 1953 D over S, where a D mint mark was punched over an S mint mark on the die. This happened when the mint repurposed a die that had originally been intended for San Francisco. These over mint mark varieties are extremely rare and valuable. A 1953 D over S penny in circulated condition can be worth $50 to $200. In uncirculated condition, they can sell for $500 to $3,000 or more, depending on the grade. To identify this variety, you need to look very carefully at the D mint mark below the date with magnification. You're looking for traces of the underlying S mint mark showing through. All right, now moving on to our third treasure, and this one has a fascinating wartime story that makes it incredibly special to collectors. What you're looking at right now is a 1944 S Lincoln Wheat Penny struck at the San Francisco Mint during one of the most critical years of World War II. And depending on its condition, this penny could be worth anywhere from 50 cents to over $30,000. Yes, you heard that right. A 1944 S penny in the right condition can be worth more than a brand new car. Let me tell you the incredible story behind this coin and show you exactly what makes certain 1944 S pennies so valuable. The year 1944 was a pivotal moment in World War II. D-Day had just occurred in June, Allied forces were pushing through Europe, and the United States was fully committed to the war effort on two fronts. Back home, the U.S. Mint was dealing with a unique situation regarding penny production. In 1943, due to the critical need for copper in the war effort, the Mint had switched to zinc-coated steel planchets for pennies. These silver-colored steel pennies were unpopular with the public and caused problems in vending machines. So in 1944, when copper became available again through recycled ammunition shell casings, the Mint switched back to a copper composition. The 1944 pennies were made from spent shell casings that had been melted down and reformed into penny planches. Think about that for a moment. The penny you're looking at right now was literally made from ammunition that may have been used in battle. That's an incredible piece of history. In 1944, 3 Mint facilities produced Lincoln Wheat Pennies. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 1.4 billion pennies with no mint mark. The Denver Mint produced over 430 million pennies marked with a D. And the San Francisco Mint, which is what we're looking at here, made over 282 million pennies marked with an S below the date. Now, with those massive production numbers, you'd think 1944S pennies would be common and inexpensive, right? Well, in circulated condition like the example you're seeing on screen, that's partially true, but here's where it gets exciting. Finding 1944S pennies in high uncirculated grades with original red luster is extremely difficult, and that's what drives values into the stratosphere. Let's examine the specific coin you're seeing on your screen right now. This 1944S Lincoln Wheat Penny shows heavy circulation wear across both the obverse and reverse. The coin has developed a medium to dark brown patina with areas of darker toning and environmental exposure throughout. On the obverse, Lincoln's portrait displays significant wear. His cheek, jaw, and hair details show substantial flattening on all the high points, which is typical for a coin that spent many years in active circulation. The date, 1944, is clearly visible and legible, which is absolutely critical for identification. Now, here's what you need to check carefully. Look below the date. On this particular example, you can see the S Mint mark, which means this penny was struck at the San Francisco Mint. The S Mint mark is small but visible below the date. The word Liberty on the left side shows moderate to heavy wear, but remains readable. In God We Trust appears above Lincoln's head with significant wear to the letters. The fields display numerous contact marks, scratches, and surface imperfections from decades of handling and circulation. On the reverse, you can see the iconic wheat stalks design. The wheat ears on both sides show heavy wear with most of the fine details worn completely smooth. The words 1 cent are still bold and clear in the center, which is excellent for identification. United States of America curves around the top of the coin, still legible despite the heavy circulation wear. E pluribus unum appears between the wheat stalks at the top, though somewhat worn. The entire reverse has that same medium to dark brown patina with areas of darker environmental toning and surface roughness from over 80 years of exposure. So what's a coin like this actually worth in today's market? In this heavily circulated condition, what professional graders would call good to very good grade, you're looking at a value between 10 and 25 cents. In fine condition where more details are visible, the value is 20 to 40 cents. In very fine condition, you're talking about 40 to 75 cents. In extremely fine condition where Lincoln's features remain relatively sharp, with only light wear, the value jumps to $1 to $3. So for circulated examples, we're not talking about life-changing money. But here's where it gets absolutely insane. If you find a 1944 S penny in uncirculated condition, one that never entered circulation, never got spent, never developed wear on Lincoln's cheek or the wheat stalks, the value skyrockets dramatically. A 1944 S penny in mint state 63 red brown condition can be worth $15 to $35. In mint state 64 red, where it retains most of its original bright red copper luster, you're looking at $40 to $85. In MS 65 red condition, the value jumps to $100 to $250. In MS 66 red, you're talking about $400 to $1,200, and here's where it gets absolutely mind-blowing. In MS 67 red or higher, where the coin is virtually perfect with blazing original red luster and no carbon spots or imperfections, 1944 S pennies have sold for $3,500 to $12,000 at auction. But wait, there's more. The very finest examples, graded MS68, read by PCGS or NGC, are extremely rare and highly sought after. These museum quality specimens with perfect surfaces and full blazing red luster have sold for $18,000 to $35,000. Yes, $35,000 for a 1944 S penny in perfect condition. Can you even imagine finding one of those in an old collection? What makes high-grade 1944 S pennies so valuable? It's the perfect storm of several factors. First, while 282 million were minted, the vast majority entered circulation immediately and developed wear. Remember, this was during World War II. Nobody was thinking about saving pennies for their condition. People were focused on the war effort, rationing, and getting by. Second, the copper planchets use. Now we're moving on to our fourth treasure, and this one takes us back over a century to one of the most significant years in world history. What you're looking at right now is a 1918 Lincoln Wheat Penny struck during the final year of World War I, and depending on its condition and mint mark, this penny could be worth anywhere from $1 to over $15,000. Let me tell you the incredible story behind this coin and show you exactly what makes certain 1918 pennies so valuable to collectors. The year 1918 was absolutely pivotal in world history. World War I was raging across Europe in its fourth and final year. The United States had entered the war in 1917, and by 1918, American troops were fully engaged on the Western Front. The Spanish flu pandemic was sweeping across the globe, eventually killing more people than the war itself. Back home in America, the economy was focused entirely on the war effort, with rationing war bonds and industrial production at full capacity. In the midst of all this chaos, the United States Mint was producing millions of Lincoln Wheat Pennies to keep commerce flowing. In 1918, 3 mint facilities produced Lincoln Wheat Pennies. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 288 million pennies with no mint mark. The Denver Mint produced over 47 million pennies marked with a D below the date. And the San Francisco Mint made over 34 million pennies marked with an S. Now, here's what makes 1918 pennies particularly interesting to collectors. While the Philadelphia no mint mark pennies had a decent mintage, both the 1918 D and especially the 1918 S had significantly lower production numbers. This scarcity, combined with the historical significance of the year and the difficulty of finding high-grade examples, makes certain 1918 pennies extremely valuable. Let's examine the specific coin you're seeing on your screen right now. This 1918 Lincoln Wheat Penny shows very heavy circulation wear across both the obverse and reverse. The coin has developed a medium to dark brown patina with areas of darker environmental toning and several green oxidation spots throughout, which is common for copper coins that have been exposed to moisture over the past 107 years. On the obverse, Lincoln's portrait displays extremely heavy wear. His cheek, jaw, and hair details show significant flattening, with most of the fine details completely worn away. This is typical for a coin that spent many decades in active circulation. The date 1918 is clearly visible and legible, which is absolutely critical for identification. Now, here's what you need to check carefully. Look below the date. On this particular example, there appears to be no mint mark visible, which means this penny was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. The word Liberty on the left side shows heavy wear but remains partially readable. In God We Trust appears above Lincoln's head with significant wear to the letters, some barely visible. The fields display numerous contact marks, scratches, surface imperfections, and those characteristic green oxidation spots from decades of handling and environmental exposure. On the reverse, you can see the iconic wheat stalks design, though heavily worn. The wheat ears on both sides show extremely heavy wear, with virtually all of the fine details worn completely smooth. The words 1 cent are still visible in the center, which is good for identification. United States of America curves around the top of the coin, still partially legible despite the heavy circulation wear. E pluribus unum appears between the wheat stalks at the top, though quite worn. The entire reverse has that same medium to dark brown patina with areas of darker toning, green oxidation spots, and surface roughness from over a century of exposure. So what's a coin like this actually worth in today's market? In this heavily circulated condition, what professional graders would call good to about, a good grade, you're looking at a value between 20 cents and $1. In fine condition, where more details are visible, the value is $1 to $2. In very fine condition, you're talking about $2 to $4. In extremely fine condition, where Lincoln's features remain relatively sharp with only light wear, the value jumps to $8 to $20. So for circulated Philadelphia Mint examples like this one, we're not talking about huge money, but yeah, here's where it gets exciting. If you find a 1918 no mint mark penny in uncirculated condition, one that never entered circulation, never got spent, never developed wear, the value increases dramatically. A 1918 penny in mint state 63. Red-brown condition can be worth $35 to $75. In mint state 64 red, where it retains most of its original bright red copper luster, you're looking at $100 to $200. In MS 65 red condition, the value jumps to $250 to $500. In MS 66 red, you're talking about $800 to $2,000. And in MS 67 red or higher, these coins have sold for $3,500 to $8,000 at auction. But here's where it gets really interesting. The 1918 D Denver penny and especially the 1918 S San Francisco penny are significantly more valuable due to their lower mintages. A 1918 D in circulated condition is worth 50 cents to $5 depending on grade. In uncirculated MS65 red, a 1918 D can be worth $600 to $1,500. In MS67 red, they've sold for $8,000 to $15,000. The 1918 S is even more valuable. In circulated condition, a 1918 S is worth 75 cents to $8. But in uncirculated MS65 red, you're looking at $800 to $2,000. In MS67 red or higher, 1918 S pennies have sold for $10,000 to $18,000 at auction. What makes high-grade 1918 pennies so valuable? First, remember that 1918 was during World War I. Nobody was thinking about saving pennies for their condition. People were focused on the war, the pandemic, and survival. Second, copper is a reactive metal that develops toning, spots, and corrosion easily over 107 years. Finding examples with perfect red surfaces is incredibly difficult. Third, the lower mintages of the D and S mint marks create natural scarcity. Fourth, there's strong collector demand. Every Lincoln cent collector needs a... And now we've reached our final coin, and this one tells a completely different story than the others we've looked at today. What you're seeing on your screen right now is a Lincoln Wheat Penny that has experienced severe environmental damage over many decades. This coin has heavy corrosion, significant surface deterioration, and what appears to be extensive exposure to moisture and possibly burial in soil. While I can see this is definitely a Lincoln Wheat Penny based on the overall size, shape, and the faint remnants of design elements, the extreme condition makes precise identification challenging. Let me walk you through what happened to this coin and what it means for collectors. Looking at this coin, the first thing that jumps out is the dramatic environmental damage, and the surfaces show heavy brown and purple corrosion with yellow and gold colored deposits scattered throughout. This type of corrosion pattern is typical of copper coins that have been exposed to moisture, soil, or harsh environmental conditions for extended periods. The coin has developed a raised, irregular rim around the edge, which often occurs when corrosion products build up and the metal expands from oxidation. On the obverse, Lincoln's portrait is barely visible through the heavy corrosion. You can make out the general outline of his profile, but virtually all the fine details have been obscured or destroyed by the corrosion process. The date is extremely difficult to read due to the surface deterioration, though there appear to be some digits visible if you look very carefully. The word liberty and in God we trust are almost completely obscured by the corrosion and surface deposits. The fields are covered with thick layers of corrosion products, creating an uneven, pitted surface texture. There are also what appear to be scratch marks or gouges, possibly from someone attempting to clean the coin or from contact with other objects during burial or storage. On the reverse, the wheat stalks design is barely discernible through the heavy corrosion. You can see the general outline of the wheat ears on both sides, but the individual grain details are completely gone. The words 1 cent, United States of America, and E pluribus unum are extremely faint and difficult to make out through the corrosion layers. So what's a coin like this actually worth? I'm going to be completely honest with you here. A Lincoln Wheat Penny in this condition with this level of environmental damage and corrosion has essentially no numismatic or collector value. Professional grading services would not even grade a coin in this condition. It would be classified as environmental damage or corroded and returned ungraded. In the collector market, this coin would be worth its intrinsic copper value only, which for a wheat penny is approximately 2 to 3 cents based on current copper prices. No dealer or collector would pay a premium for a coin in this condition regardless of the date or mint mark. Now, you might be wondering, is there any way to restore or clean a coin like this? The short answer is no, not really. Once a coin has experienced this level of corrosion and environmental damage, the original surface is permanently altered or destroyed. Some people attempt to clean heavily corroded coins using various methods like soaking in olive oil, using a rock tumbler, or even harsh chemical treatments. However, these cleaning methods can cause additional damage and will never restore the coin to anything close to its original condition. In fact, aggressive cleaning can make the coin look worse and can remove any remaining details. Here's what's important to understand about coin condition and environmental damage. Coins are made of metal, and metal reacts with its environment over time. Copper, which is what pennies are made of, is particularly reactive. When exposed to moisture, oxygen, acids, and soil, or other environmental factors, copper undergoes oxidation and corrosion. This process creates copper oxide, copper carbonate, and other corrosion products that you see as the brown, green, and purple colors on damaged coins. Once this corrosion has penetrated deeply into the metal and destroyed the surface details, there's no way to reverse the process without removing metal from the coin, which destroys any remaining numismatic value. So what should you do if you find a coin like this? First, understand that it has no significant collector value, so there's no point in spending money to have it professionally graded or authenticated. Second, if you're curious about the date or want to try to identify it more precisely, you can try very gentle cleaning methods. Soaking the coin in distilled water for several days can sometimes help loosen surface dirt and deposits without causing additional damage. You can use a soft toothbrush to very gently remove loose material. But never scrub hard or use abrasive materials. Third, accept that some coins are simply too far gone to be collectible, and that's okay. Not every old coin is a treasure. However, here's the silver lining and the lesson from this coin. This heavily damaged example shows us exactly why condition is so incredibly important in coin collecting. Remember all those values I mentioned for the previous coins in uncirculated condition? A 1944 S penny in mint state, 67 red, worth $35,000 versus this corroded example worth 2 cents? That's the difference that condition makes. This is why serious collectors store their coins in proper holders, in climate-controlled environments, away from moisture and contaminants. This is why you should never clean valuable coins or expose them to harsh conditions. This is why professional grading and authentication matters. If you're building a coin collection, this damaged example teaches us several critical lessons. First, always examine coins carefully before purchasing them. Look for signs of environmental damage, corrosion, cleaning, or other problems that affect value. Second, store your coins properly. Use archival quality holders. Keep them in a dry environment with stable temperature, and never store coins in PVC, plastic, or other materials that can cause chemical damage. Third, understand that not every old coin is valuable. Age alone doesn't make a coin worth money. It's the combination of age, rarity, historical significance, and most importantly, condition that determines value. So while this particular coin won't be paying for anyone's retirement, it serves as an important reminder and teaching tool. It shows us what can happen when coins aren't properly cared for, and it helps us appreciate the truly exceptional examples that have survived in high-grade condition. Every coin tells a story, and this one's story is about the passage of time and the importance of preservation. And that wraps up our look at these 5 fascinating pennies. From common circulated examples to heavily damaged pieces, each one teaches us something important about coin collecting, condition, and value. Remember, the key to finding valuable coins is knowing what to look for, understanding condition, and always checking